Alright, so we've looked at the best weapons in Chapter 5, but what about the worst weapons? And I gotta be honest with you guys, there are a ton of bad weapons that have been introduced in Chapter 5, so this list was actually a lot more difficult to make than when we looked at some of the best weapons. This list is open to any weapon or item that has been introduced throughout the first 4 seasons of Chapter 5. Of course, this list may change in a couple seasons, so maybe I'll remake it later down the road. If you guys go on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave it a like and use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop. With all that being said, let's get right into this. And I'm starting this video off with a bang. I have been waiting forever to rip into this weapon. It's the Nemesis AR. Any longtime subscribers of this channel know that I absolutely despise the Nemesis AR. I have always gone for the Striker AR over the Nemesis, and when I first thought about this video, the first weapon that came to mind was the Nemesis. I just don't like it. I hate how clunky it feels. What I will say good about the Nemesis is it has really good handling. At mid to long range, this is definitely the AR you want to take. Back in the day, if you were able to get like a P2X optic on it, get a grip, even chuck a suppressor on there, this weapon could be a really solid AR. But I just remember just wanting to absolutely throw my controller at the wall every time I saw a Nemesis come out of a chest. Also, this is just me being petty. I hate the way this weapon sounds. I absolutely hate it. As you guys can tell, I am a generational Nemesis AR hater, and when I checked the loot pool for Chapter 5 Season 4 and saw that the Nemesis was not in there, man, you guys should have seen me. I was smiling ear to ear. I was eating that up. Striker gang in the comments below. We are taking over the battle. Striker is better than the Nemesis. And let's follow it up with another weapon that I absolutely hated to see. That was the Enforcer AR. And as you guys can tell, we are starting at Chapter 5 Season 1, and then we'll kind of work our way up until Chapter 5 Season 4. I remember when this weapon launched, I genuinely thought that the Enforcer AR was the worst weapon I had ever laid my hands on. Now, I won't go as far as to say that. I do think the Enforcer AR, if you use it the right way, right, get a 2x scope on it, get a suppressor, it can be really, really good. A top tier, basically like DMR, right? You really just have to have the right mindset when you go into using this weapon. If you go into it trying to use it like a Striker, it's just not going to work. The fire rate is way too slow. But if you went into it using it like a DMR and treating it like so, and kitting out the weapon to be a basically long-range weapon, you're probably going to have a lot of success. To me, the Enforcer kind of always felt like it was trying to be the Reaper or trying to be the counter to the Reaper sniper rifle, but when you had the best sniper of all time running rampant in Chapter 5 Season 1, in my opinion, there was absolutely no reason to ever touch the Enforcer. It was kind of close. I was kind of debating whether I should put the Enforcer or the Huntress DMR from Chapter 5 Season 2 on this list, but I do actually think the Huntress DMR is a really solid weapon, especially in a season where there were no snipers. The Huntress was your basic go-to long-range weapon. But genuinely, my only memory of the Enforcer AR is pulling it out of the chest and being so hyped that I got a Reaper, but instead it was just an Eagle Eye Enforcer AR. Like get this thing out of here. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Staying with Chapter 5 Season 1, let's talk about the Hyper SMG, and I guess this kind of counts for Chapter 5 Season 4 because, as you guys know, this weapon is currently in the game, and there's really no other way to put it. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with this one, right? I think there'll be some disagreements with the first 2 picks on this list, but not with this weapon. Everybody I've talked to who plays this game pretty regularly, and all the YouTubers have said that the Hyper SMG is the worst submachine gun in Chapter 5, and I absolutely agree with that. I feel like the Chapter 5 Season 2 drum gun could potentially give it a run for its money, but I said this in my other video. I believe I saw a stat on Twitter yesterday that the Hyper SMG has either the worst or the second worst DPS out of any SMG ever, tied with the suppressed SMG. And yeah, that is not a good stat to be the holder of. Look, we all know it was inferior to the Thunderburst in Chapter 5 Season 1. Nobody was ever touching the Hyper SMG. It's probably the only time in the meta where a Burst SMG has ever beaten out the fully auto SMG. And I think this thing desperately needs a buff in Chapter 5 Season 4. I think everybody right now is taking the dual micro SMGs over this, and for a good reason. I think they are much better than the Hyper. Yeah, I mean, I don't think this thing ever should have even come back in Chapter 5 Season 4. It desperately needs a buff, and I think it will get one down the line. But yeah, I mean, for now, this thing is shooting straight marshmallows. And the final weapon from Chapter 5 Season 1, yeah, I know, guys, this season had a ton of bad weapons, but you might not expect this one. It's actually the Hammer Pump Shotgun. I really just kind of have trouble wrapping my head around why they keep bringing back versions of the pump that are just obviously worse than the regular pump, the one that we've had since day 1 in this game. But I mean, if you look at every other shotgun introduced in Chapter 5, I would say every single one is better than the Hammer Pump. Does that mean that the hammer pump is necessarily bad? I don't really think so. I think there's a couple seasons where you could throw the hammer pump in previous chapters and it would probably be the go-to shotgun. And it might just be a bad luck of the draw for this weapon. I mean, think about it. The Gatekeeper shotgun and the Frenzy Auto shotgun. Right away, you have two of, I would say, probably top 5, top 10 shotguns of all time. And I would say that the combat shotgun was probably your go-to shotgun in Chapter 5, Season 3, especially in no build. So yeah, the hammer pump just kind of sunk to the bottom, and still in Chapter 5, Season 4, I think it is arguably the worst shotgun. It's really between the Sovereign or the hammer pump, in my opinion. And I actually totally lied to you guys because there is another Chapter 5, Season 1 weapon on this list. It was just so bad that I forgot it was even in the game. It's the Anvil rocket launcher. Out of any season they could have put the Anvil rocket launcher in, they put it in Chapter 5, Season 1, and they didn't even bring it back in Chapter 5, Season 3, the season that was known for being like the biggest, most overpowered vehicle season ever. I genuinely cannot believe they actually did not bring the Anvil rocket launcher back. I think out of any season this weapon would have flourished in, it would have been that season, but no, it never came back. And so it was just left in Chapter 5, Season 1, right? And did anybody use this thing? Absolutely not. It is one of, if not the worst rocket launchers in the game. It's a cool idea, right? But for me, at least, it just doesn't have a place in Battle Royale. And honestly, I would be surprised if we ever saw the Anvil rocket launcher come back. I mean, think about it. If they're not going to bring it back in Chapter 5, Season 3, the only season where it would actually be useful, I mean, why would they ever bring it back? I mean, wow, yeah, what an absolute disaster this weapon is. And speaking of another weapon that's an absolute disaster, we are now in Chapter 5, Season 2, and that's going to be the Tactical AR. And wow, they did my boy so dirty. They absolutely ran this thing through the mud. Why could they not have just literally taken the exact same Tactical AR from Chapter 4, Season 1 and just place it in Chapter 5, Season 2? If they had just done that, everybody would have been so much more happy. Even give it that red dot from Chapter 4, Season 1. I loved that version of the TAC AR, and so did so many other people. I mean, heck, just bring back the one from Chapter 1. Why did they have to make it so bad? I don't know. It really frustrates me because the Tactical AR is such a cool weapon, such a good idea, and has a really cool, rich history throughout Fortnite, but they absolutely ended the line here. Like, I don't know about you guys, I used this weapon like 2 or 3 times just because I love the Tactical Assault Rifle, and I was so happy it was back, but after I used it for a couple games, yeah, I dropped this thing and never picked it up again. They tried to give it a big buff by reducing the recoil and spread and significantly reducing the damage fall off, and even buffing the damage from 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 to 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24 in the respective rarities. But yeah, it didn't work. This thing was awful. And the final weapon of Chapter 5, Season 2 is going to be Zeus's Thunderbolts. And if you asked me on the launch of this season whether I thought Zeus's Thunderbolts would end up being on a worst weapons list, I would tell you absolutely no, you are out of your mind. And that is because it was extremely strong, because you could damage players through builds. This was not a joke. This was not like a bug and wasn't meant to happen. This is how the weapon was designed. If somebody was hiding behind a wall and you threw the Thunderbolt of Zeus on the wall, it would hit them. But that all changed in Update V29.1 when the Thunderbolt of Zeus no longer damaged players through builds, and that's basically where this thing ended. At this point, it really wasn't worth it to take the Thunderbolt of Zeus because people were starting to realize they are literally just sitting in air in the same spot for like 5 to 10 seconds, and you weren't doing enough damage to like basically make it worth it for you to be a free shot up there. So yeah, after the first few weeks in the season, I don't think anybody was touching the Thunderbolts of Zeus. And alright, we are now moving on to Chapter 5, Season 3, and I only have one weapon here, surprisingly. It's the Tribeam laser rifle. And yeah, I was kind of stuck here between whether I wanted to put the Tribeam laser rifle or the tow hook cannon, and I guess both are kind of weapons that are like really gimmicky and I guess good if you use them in like one specific way, but not versatile at all. But for me, I think the Tribeam laser rifle deserves to be on this list. I remember everybody was so hyped when this weapon came out because everyone's like, oh, we got a hit scan weapon back, our first hit scan weapon of Chapter 5, it's gonna be God tier. And yeah, lo and behold, it wasn't. Like I said earlier, it's just a gimmicky weapon, right? Like there is bloom seem kind of like you just have like the same circle reticle, and every time you shoot a shot, the bullet would go somewhere within that reticle. It wasn't like you had a crosshair that was really tight. You guys know what I'm talking about if you use this weapon, or the gameplay will show it. But even if you had perfect aim, your reticle was right on their head, you were not guaranteed to hit a headshot. I don't know, look, I really didn't like this weapon. I know there were some fans of like the collaboration aspect of it, and I understand why you would like it in that sense, but the Tribeam laser rifle was absolutely not for me, and I don't think a lot of people will disagree with this. And now it's time for Chapter 5 Season 4, and this one was kind of tough because there have actually been a ton of really strong weapons in Chapter 5 Season 4. But I believe the worst weapon this season, well, isn't actually a weapon at all. It's an item. It is Mysterio's Stealth Medallion, which is acquired at the Doom stat. I don't think anybody will disagree with me when I say this. I think this is the worst medallion we've ever seen. And I think that could actually be changed with just one tweak to how this medallion works. And that is basically making it so that when you crouch and you become invisible, it does not stop what you are doing. And what I mean by this, and the main reason why this medallion is so bad, is you guys probably have experienced this, right? When you are hitting a big pot, right? It's natural. What do you want to do? You want to crouch. Well, if you hit a big pot and you crouch, all of a sudden your character has to like activate the invisibility, and now you lose your big pot. It cancels all of it. It's the same thing if you're like aiming down sights, right? You aim down sights, you crouch, right, to get better accuracy, obviously. And what does your character do? It has to go out of sights to activate the invisibility. In my opinion, this medallion actually does more bad than good. And if I saw this thing currently in the game, I am not taking it. I'm leaving it on the ground. And I would recommend that you guys do the same thing until they change that about this medallion, because right now it is just plain bad. And in my opinion, it is clearly not only one of the worst items in the current season of Fortnite, but one of the worst items in the entirety of Chapter 5. Well, alright guys, that was my kind of look back at some of Fortnite's worst weapons in all of Chapter 5. If you went on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave it a like. I'm sure if you're at this point in the video already, you've already commented telling me how good the Nemesis AR is. I don't care. I don't care. I love the Striker AR. If you haven't checked out basically part 1 to this video, which is the best Chapter 5 weapons, go do that, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.